Hello everyone, I am Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to discuss the News Today articles for 29th of October. Right. So in today's discussion, we are going to cover 5 important articles in detail, which includes the articles like the first article is regarding the International Solar Alliance Assembly. So this is the Solar Alliance Assembly that had held in India under the aegis of the International Solar Alliance. So we will discuss regarding this particular International Solar Alliance and what were the outcome of this particular ISA assembly, right? The next article is regarding the NDCs Synthesis report. We will discuss regarding what are the NDCs and what is mentioned in this particular report. Next is regarding the India's soil health. So basically we have seen a lot of issues when it comes to the soil health in India because excessive fertilizer usage in India, and without even knowing the soil profile, the farmers are asked to apply these particular fertilizers because there have been subsidies. So we will discuss regarding what are the recommendations that have been provided as a part of this particular Indian soil health. Next is regarding the NITI Aayog's report on the service sector. So there were 2 reports that were released regarding the service sector. Generally, we are talking about the manufacturing sector or the industrial sector, but the service sector, despite contributing the largest GVA, but still gets neglected, right? So we will talk about what NITI Aayog's report is talking regarding the services sector. The last article in the detailed discussion we are going to cover regarding the relocation of the forest dwellers. So there have been people who are residing in the forest from the generation, generally the tribal people, right? So in that particular context, if there are any developmental things with respect to that forest, specifically with respect to conservation, if that is being done, in that cases there is relocation of these forest dwellers is taking place. So in that cases, what may be the solution regarding the problem of the relocation of the forest dwellers? We will discuss about that. Next, we will discuss regarding the places in news. So today we are going to discuss regarding Turkey, and then we are going to discuss certain other quick updates which are as follows, right? So let's start the discussion with the very first article regarding the International Solar Alliance. Now, this is the heading that 8th session of the International Solar Alliance ISA Assembly held in New Delhi. So this particular International Solar Alliance, which was initiated in 2015, was pioneered by India and also co-sponsored by the country like France, right? And since then, it has incorporated multiple countries. So it had become a large intergovernmental organization which is focusing upon the solar energy, which is striving to connect the entire world into one solar grid. So that's why it is very, very important, and since the initiative was led by India, that's why from the India's perspective also it is important. And along with that, when we are focusing a lot upon the renewable energy, it becomes further important. So from the perspective of the UPSC examination, GS paper 2, where the international relation, where important international institutions are there, GS paper 3, where we are talking about the environment, energy, economy, climate change, and here we are also talking about the sustainable energy or the sustainable resources of energy. Here this topic again plays a very important role. So now, what is ISA or the International Solar Alliance? So as I have already talked about that it was launched in 2015, the lead was taken by India, and along with that, France cooperated with India in the COP under the aegis of UNFCCC in Paris. So in the Conference of Parties 21 in Paris, along with the COP21 summit, there was International Solar Alliance that was also established. Now, as the name suggests, what might be the objective or the aim of this particular organization? So the aim or objective of this particular organization is to ensure the clean, reliable and affordable energy, because this is focusing upon the solar energy, right? So we know that there is the large part of the world which is lying under the underdeveloped or the least developed countries, but they have enormous resource of energy in the form of the solar energy. So why not to connect the countries in the form of a grid and also support the capacity building of these particular country in order to ensure better energy access, right? So in that case, it is important. Also driving the sustainable growth, because solar energy is a renewable source, so it will also ensure the sustainable growth, along with that improving the quality of life. So it will also ensure comparatively better quality of life when we talk about the renewable energy or the non-fossil fuel based sources of energy. Now, It is largest treaty-based intergovernmental organization from the global south. Now see, this can be a fact that may be asked in the UPSC examination. Why? Because see, generally you might have seen majority of the intergovernmental organization or the multilateral organization, they are headquartered either in Switzerland or maybe Washington DC or maybe New York or maybe France, right? But this is one such intergovernmental organization where the global south played a very important role, and the headquarter is also located in the country of global south, which is in India. In the Gurugram, the headquarter of ISA is located, right? Now headquarter is in India. Apart from that, membership, when we talk about the membership, 124 member and the signatory countries which are part of the International Solar Alliance. So when it was launched in 2015, the criteria was kept that the countries which are fully or partially lying between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, इनके बीच में जो countries हैं, they can become the participant of the International Solar Alliance. But later on quickly realized that there are many other countries which can get benefited out of this, and hence the criteria was relaxed and it is open to all the UN member. They can become the member of the International Solar Alliance. Why to leave some countries, right? Now, it is also the largest treaty-based intergovernmental organization, as we have already discussed. Now, again, when we talk about the mission of this organization, it is to unlock $1 trillion solar investments by 2030. Lastly, in this, regarding the initiatives, so see, as a part of the initiatives of International Solar Alliance, what is the main objective behind the formation of this organization? In order to ensure the accessible solar energy across the world, ensuring the solar grid, supporting the countries which are the countries of global south, specifically the least developed and the developing countries. So in that case, they have taken multiple initiatives, either to support certain startups, either to give funding to certain countries, even to support capacity building of the countries, right? So in all these manners, there have been support that has been provided to the countries. So for example, there is Solar X startup. So in that case, startup challenge. So in that particular case, what we are going to do, we are supporting basically the countries, or in that particular countries, the startup which are coming with the innovative technologies or innovative stuff as far as the solar energy is concerned. So there is the support from the technological perspective, support from the funding perspective. This is being provided. So it is also supporting the entrepreneurship, right? Next is the Star Sea Alliance, which is also supporting the technological aspects, also supporting the establishment of the global capability centers, right? Apart from that, also initiating, like Silicon Valley is playing a very important role as far as the IT and the other technological hub is concerned. So similar kind of setup is need to be ensured under this initiative for the solar energy, and that will ensure basically the capacity building as far as the renewable energy and predominantly the solar energy is concerned, and also the industrial base will be based upon the solar energy. Next is the Global Solar Facility. So you have the Green Energy Facility is also there with respect to funding. So Global Solar Facility is going to support the financial aspects. So finances it is going to support, it is going to fund the project. So basically, if there are any project coming out of the countries which are in dilemma that whether they are able to support these particular projects which are coming up from the renewable energy, so in that cases, the Global Solar Facility is going to provide the funding related assistance and support. Also the capacity building. Lastly, One Sun, One World and One Grid, which ensures that there will be interconnectedness that will be ensured among the countries regarding the supply and demand and supply ka aspects from the perspective of solar energy. It will ensure that there will be an interconnected grid that is created among the countries. So this will ensure that some countries might be in deficit, some countries might be in excess. So this will ensure that excess to deficit, there will be flow of the energy. So like this, there are certain initiatives that have been taking place, or that are already going on, or that will be taking place in a certain amount of time. Now, next is regarding what has happened in this particular summit. What are the key highlights regarding this particular summit? Because this had happened in India, there was presence of the President of India also. That's why it becomes very, very important in order to understand certain outcomes of this summit. What is the outcome? First is regarding the launch of the Sunrise, which is solar upcycling network for recycling, innovation and the stakeholder engagement. So as the name suggests, it is going to talk about the recycling. So suppose karo, if there is any specific solar plant or the solar power plant, there will be end of the life products. that might be converted into the waste. So there has to be utilization of those things, and from that we will extract the important things which can be extracted, which can be recycled. So it will ensure the generation of circular economy, so the waste minimization and also maximizing the output. Along with that, also when you are going to ensure a circular economy, there will be a avenue available with respect to the employment generation, because you will need the people who are going to collect those things, you will need the people who are going to process those things, you will need the entrepreneurs, right? So in that case, it is also going to generate the employment, and that to green employment, right? Because it is going for the renewable energy sector. Next is the Small Island Developing States SIDS procurement MOU. So see, there are many such small island developing countries which are lying at the danger zone, because the sea level is rising, climate change is posing a threat to them, right? So the collaboration of these particular small island developing countries along with this ISA platform, where they are going to collaborate with the International Solar Alliance along with the World Bank platform, which will ensure the capacity building, which will ensure their supply to the renewable energy. Along with that, that will help with respect to the funding and finances related aspects. Next is regarding the ISS flagship report. So as you might have heard of the reports like the ease of doing business, which was talking previously about that how easy it is to set up a business, how easy is it to ensure the compliances, kitna easy hai in order to run a business in a country or the region, right? Similarly, ease of doing solar 2025 is one such flagship report of ISA, which talks about how easy it is to ensure that the setup of the international for the solar energy production is going to take place. So that will ensure ki jitna easy hoga, that will ensure comparatively better opportunities for the people who are ready to set up their industries in this domain, right? Next is regarding the solar trend. This highlights regarding ki what is the trend of the solar energy generation in that particular region or the place, right? So these are the flagship report. Apart from that, Global Capability Center. So these are basically the offshore firms of the global companies. For example, let's say there is a company in India which is having the mastery with respect to the solar energy generation. Now that company can support through the global capability centers in multiple countries in order to support their initiative with respect to the solar energy production. So like this, there may be other countries company that can come to India, establish their center in India or the offshore unit in India, and that will also support the development of the or the production of the solar energy. Was unveiled to create the Silicon Valley for the solar in India. So this is being talked about from the India's perspective, but this can be replicated even across the world, where the countries can get the help from these global capability center of the Indian firms who are doing better in the solar energy generation in their own respective countries. And also there is the ISA Academy, which is the AI based online learning platform regarding the solar energy, how that works, how that can be made more efficient, how we can scale up the things like, right? So these are the things with respect to the key highlights of the session. Now, one such important thing which we have already discussed regarding the solar and the other form of the renewable energy, that as India has taken up the intended nationally determined contributions under the aegis of the Conference of Party of UNFCCC. In that case, India has achieved 50% non-fossil fuel based energy generation, electricity generation, right? So this is one such milestone which India had achieved 5 years before the target year of 2030. So that is a major breakthrough, and here the solar energy played a very important role. Why I am discussing this? Because the topic is of obviously solar energy, and next topic is about the nationally determined contribution. So both have the convergence, a lot of convergence, right? And even the question can mix both the aspects, and there can be a question regarding this, right? So that's why it is important. Now see, the previous year question, they asked the simple question, if there is any current context. So if it is in news because of any reason, you should be having at least basics cleared regarding those particular things. So following statements: ISA was launched at UNFCCC 2015. The alliance include all the member countries of the UN. Now, just try to refer the second statement and identify whether it is right or wrong. Post it in the comments. Next is regarding the NDCs, which is the nationally determined contribution. So the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement synthesis report by UNFCCC. So not recently exactly, but in a last few years, the countries had came up with their revised or for the first time nationally determined contribution under the aegis of the Paris Climate Agreement. And in that, they have taken up certain voluntary commitment. So now the question comes, what is basically the nationally determined contribution? As the name suggests, nationally means the country by their own. Determined means based upon their own idea, their own need, their own expectations and their own demography, they can identify कि किस तरीके से they can reduce the carbon emission. That's why nationally determined. And contribution means when the world is increasing the carbon emission, how they are going to contribute in order to reduce the carbon along with the greenhouse gases reduction or the emission reduction. That's why they are the nationally determined contribution. So rather than imposing a framework कि आपको इतना करना है, you have to reduce this much, these are the nationally determined contribution कि we are asking you कि how much you are going to reduce the carbon emission in let's say 5 years or next 5 years, right? So in that case, you might be telling your own expectation based upon your own developmental status, and this will give an idea that whether we are able to or we are going to reduce the carbon emission and vis-a-vis the reduction of the global temperature rise. So this can be a very important indicator in order to identify whether we will be able to achieve the reduction of the global temperature, which is about to cause the climate change. So from the perspective, again, since it is related to a lot of frameworks, so that's why IR, GS paper 2 and also GS paper 3, environment and ecology, energy, economy, climate change, these are obviously the prominent topics with which it can be related. Now, what are the highlights of the report as per the UNFCCC synthesis report? Now, the first is regarding the NDCs. We have talked about that what these are and which is the framework for the NDCs. So it is under the Article 4 of the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015, which was under the COP21. Now, the nationally determined contribution, as I have already talked about, that it is taken by the country itself. It is based upon the country's own expectation. So the countries are regularly submitting their NDCs. Okay? So submitted by the 64 parties that account for 30% of the global emissions in 2019. And as per this report, which has synthesized कि भाई whatever targets were taken by the countries, एक expectation था कि we have to reduce, if possible, the increase of the global temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius. 2 degree target रखा था, but we had put certain more aspiration कि we will try to keep it 1.5 degrees Celsius because उसमें ही a lot of temperature rise will increase the sea level also, and that will have the larger consequences for the small island nations. So in that case, it is mentioned कि whatever targets were taken, that falls short of the emission reduction जो 1.5 degree Celsius सोचा गया था. What was thought 1.5 degrees Celsius. So these targets that were taken by the countries that are falling short regarding this. Now, what was the expectation? The expectation was that the required emission cuts must be 60%. That means right now the amount of the carbon that you are emitting, there should be 60% reduction in order to achieve the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius ka by 2035. If we have to be in line, तो 2035 तक 1.5 डिग्री सेल्सियस तक we can limit. That particular thing will be the limiting point. But as we are currently progressing, the reduction is only about 17%. That means 60 achieve करना था and we are achieving roughly 17%. That means it is not going to reach this particular target, and the temperature rise will be comparatively on the higher side, which is a dangerous sign, because if the temperature increases, the snow will melt, the global sea level will increase, and that will submerge the coastal areas, mainly in the developing countries, small island countries, right? And that is going to get impacted. Further, this report highlights that the WMO's greenhouse gas bulletin जो है, that shows that the level of CO2, CH4, which is the methane, and the N2O reach the new record. That means it's not only about the carbon dioxide, but along with that methane also and N2O also, and that is also rising, which is causing another major issue regarding not only one set of greenhouse gas, but there are complex greenhouse gases also that are getting increased, right? Apart from that, there are certain other observations of this particular report. The report highlights regarding the emission trajectories. So they are mentioning that what is the trend of emission. So in this particular trend of emission, what they are mentioning, that the new NDCs which are released recently, that is mentioning that the peak emission will be reached roughly before 2030. Matlab, the countries who have submitted the nationally determined contribution, based upon that, the peak emission, matlab unka jo maximum carbon emission hai, that will reach roughly before 2030, and after that it will reduce roughly 2035 tak. But the trend of that particular decrease is not sufficient in order to keep the target of the 1.5 degrees Celsius. That means the emission trajectory is not up to line. That has to be reduced further. And along with that, many such countries which are yet outside this particular target taking, matlab unhone submit hi nahi kiya, they have not submitted even. And if they are the major emitting countries, so in that particular case, just assume that if the largest stakeholders are not going to take up the targets, in that cases we will not be able to achieve any substantial progress. Now next is the scope progression. So it has highlighted that yes, to some extent it increased the quality and the credibility with 89% parties which are communicating their target. It is talking about the NDCs, but see, still 89% parties, 11% to reh gayi hai, and it is talking about parties. Now in that case, many of the countries which are left over here are those countries jo ki major emitter hai, right? Like the developed countries, they have not yet submitted. Next is the conditionality gap. Now see, suppose karo, if you have to take the target, now you have taken the target, assuming that you will get the support from some countries. Let's say as India, we are taking target, we will think ki chalo, if we are going to implement this project, the developed countries are going to support, we will get the finances, let's say from your World Bank, maybe from, let's say, IMF wala things ke through, or maybe through any developed countries technology transfer. But there is a conditionality gap that is being observed ki you have thought about this, but then in reality you are not getting those particular funds. Even if those funds are there, they are with conditionality. So in that cases, the afforestation, reforestation, solar energy, yahan par the major issue is that we are expecting, we are taking target, but the other country is not supporting, we are not getting fund, we are not getting technology. In that cases, there is a gap that is emerging in this implementation. Lastly is the private finances. Now obviously you try to think that initially whenever a technology is initiated, initially that is costly. Jaise economy of scale is going to get increased, that particular technology ka price come. Just assume with the example of the solar energy. Initially 1 unit generation of the energy from the solar plant was costly, a lot costly. Now it has substantially reduced, even it is competing with the coal and the other form of energy which was previously considered as the easy form. Now in that cases, if for the new and the renewable resources, if for those things, if we are trying to go for generating the private finances, they will need certain backing also. Suppose agar wo project uplift nahi hua, वो टेक ऑफ नहीं किया, what will be the scenario? That's why the private sector is hesitant. So in that cases, the government should first take the lead in this sector. जैसे जैसे profitability the private sector will see, that they will also enter into this particular thing, right? So these are the aspects regarding the report's highlights. Now when we have talked about that nationally determined contribution, obviously as a responsible country, India has very initially had taken a lot of the nationally determined contribution, and later on in 2022 they have revised also. So very ambitious target, but it was not like India has taken the target and forget. India has also implemented those particular targets. So for example, what is the updated target? So updated target is to reduce the emission intensity. Matlab, how much carbon is getting produced in one economic unit generation. In that particular case, it is 45% from 2005 level say 45%. It used to be comparatively lesser, 33-35% tha, but it has increased to 45%. That means significant progress India has done in this. Now next is 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity. Now this target was taken for 2030 and India has achieved this in 2025. That means even if we have taken the ambitious target, we are paving the way for the countries let's see that how we have adopted the model of the development and how we are progressing on that. Even 5 years before the target, we have achieved this significant milestone. Last is regarding the additional carbon sink, that means afforestation and the existing forest में reforestation, 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon equivalent we will create additional carbon sink, existing के अलावा additional carbon sink, that is going to reduce the greenhouse gas का emission. Along with that, sequestration also will be ensured. Now see, the questions like describe the major outcomes of the 26th session of the COP to the UNFCCC. What are the commitments made? Simply, whenever there is any specific historic summit with respect to climate change that takes place, or maybe any important other, let's say any specific organization, like recently ASEAN summit was there, iske pehle SCO summit tha. So generally regarding that, there can be a question if there has been certain things important came out. For example, last year they had asked regarding BIMSTEC, which was a significant summit, BRICS, which led into the Kazan declaration. So that was also a prominent and the historic summit, and both of them ke baare mein UPSC had asked the question. The next article is regarding the Center for Science and Environment's Sustainable Food System report. For the report highlights the India's soil health. That means this is regarding the India's soil health. Now we all know that in order to produce anything, we have to remain dependent on the soil, and generally in the India, it has been observed that the soil quality is getting deteriorated. Why? Because see, traditionally also it was felt that India की जो soils हैं, there are certain nutrient, whether it is the macronutrient or micronutrient, they are missing. किसी soils में nitrogen की कमी है, some soils are deficient with nitrogen, certain soils might be deficient with certain other macronutrient or micronutrient, right? But in that particular cases, we have given the option with respect to the regarding the fertilizer to the farmers. Now, excessive utilization of the fertilizers by farmer led to the further issues and many such diseases also, and also the diversion of fertilizer. That's why there is a need to revisit this thing, and even we have launched multiple initiatives, for example soil health card, which is talking about the nutrient profiling of the soil, but still there are certain issues persist. Let's discuss about that. So from UPSC, again GS paper 3, agriculture, environment, sustainable development, GS paper 2, policies, government policies, social justice, because it will include the subsidy related policies also. Now, talking about the report's finding, what are the highlights from this particular report? So the report highlights multiple things. First, it is talking about that there is severe nutrient deficiencies in the Indian soil. So this report highlights that ki India ke jo soils hain, they are deficient with respect to certain nutrient. Now see, let's say if you have to produce certain legume crop, you will need certain specific nutrient. If you have to sow, let's say rice, maybe wheat, there will be separate set of nutrient, macro and the micronutrient that will be needed, right? So this has been got from the soil health card data. Now in that case, it is being highlighted that 64% of the samples, whatever samples were taken for understanding and creating this report, 64% of the samples were lacking with the nitrogen. That means the 64% soils out of those samples that were taken were deficient with nitrogen. Then with respect to the organic carbon, that means there will be certain organic material that are mixed with respect to the soil, maybe at the time of formation or maybe later on. So that is also helpful for the soil, that will ensure moisture retention, that will ensure better fertility, right? And in that case, it has been observed roughly 48.5% of the Indian soils are deficient with respect to the organic carbon. So see, if these are not there, we have to additionally add this in order to make the soil comparatively better productive, right? When we talk about the micronutrients shortage, 55% of the soil are deficient with boron, which is a micronutrient. Zinc mein it is 35%. See, obviously this data exactly is not that much important, but if there is a question from the geography perspective also, GS paper 1 maybe you can expect this, even GS paper 3 agriculture perspective say, there you can quote this. And one or two example with respect to, let's say nitrogen or maybe the organic carbon, that will give weightage to the pointer that you are writing. Lastly, the high urea consumption. So 68% of the total fertilizer consumption is the urea, right? Now see, when we talk about the consumption of different fertilizer, there should be a diverse set of fertilizer. Now NPK mein sirf you are applying N only, which means nitrogen. What about P? What about K? So in that cases there has to be the diversification based upon the soil need, और उसी की वजह से we came up with the soil health card, profiling of the soil, right? Now what is the implication that is taking place because of the deficiencies in the soil in India? Now see, one such thing is obviously the production, and the productivity is directly proportional ki bhai how much nutrient, macro and the micronutrient are available. If more available, then in that cases obviously the production and productivity and the yield is going to get increased. If they will be lacking, the productivity is going to reduce. Now if the productivity is reduced, obviously the production will be getting impacted. It will also directly impact the food security, because you have to cater a large amount of population, and the productivity is getting declined because of the lack of the macro and the micronutrient. Similarly, if there will be food security ka issue, crop productivity ka issue, it is directly going to impact the farmer's income. Yes or no? Next is regarding the sustainable agriculture. Now see, if these things are lacking, you have to apply the additional fertilizer. When you are going to apply additional fertilizer, if you do not have any other avenue available, you will apply the urea based fertilizer, and in that cases obviously it will not be sustainable one, right? Because it might lead to excessive nitrogen in the soil and other macronutrient are indeficient, right? Next is the carbon sequestration and the climate change mitigation. So soil also acts as a major aspect for the carbon sequestration. If there is, let's say, biochar or maybe the high organic content, in that cases that may be utilized as the sequestering of the carbon. So in that cases it is also going to get impacted, right? Rather than sequestration, there will be more emission. So these are the implications of the deficiencies. Now talking about recommendations. So there are certain recommendations that have been provided in order to revamp the entire soil health related aspects or the avenues in India. So in the recommendation, first is regarding expanding the current soil monitoring under the soil health card. Now right now this soil health card scheme that was initiated in 2015, it is focusing upon the nutrient, which are the indicators of this. So there are 12 chemical indicators, which includes nitrogen, which include phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, which are the macronutrients, so NPK, right? Then zinc, iron, copper, manganese, boron, which are the micronutrients we have seen. These are also deficient, right? Then there is pH, electrical conductivity, and the organic carbon, which we have seen also deficient. Now these are the things. Now what about the physical texture? What about the biological composition, right? So in all these cases, suppose karo, if we will make it further diverse, the chances are high that we will be holistically doing any kind of observation. So it is mentioning that physical aspects, which include the texture, which includes the compaction. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि soil is getting loosened, right? And that will obviously reduce the water retention capacity, and soil will flow away with the water. And also the biological one, which talk about the microbial activity within that soil, whether the microbial activity is taking place, because that is also going to improve about the productivity of that particular soil, right? So it is talking about expanding the current framework, which is just based upon the chemical indicator, but also talk about the physical and the biological indicators. The next is about the reforming the fertilizer subsidy. Now right now it is one shoe fit for all approach generally. Thoda bahut there is neem coated urea or maybe other type of innovations are there. But the point is that generally when we are providing, or the government is providing through the centrally sponsored scheme, the subsidy for the fertilizer, there are high chances that the fertilizer ka misutilization is taking place. And in that cases mein, it is very, very difficult in order to ensure the rationalization. Ab more subsidy for the urea base, so the farmer are taking more urea based fertilizer, and that is reducing the capacity of the soil. So if the reform takes place in the subsidy policy, if there will be comparatively more outcome based subsidy or basic facilitation, first assessment, and then based upon that only there will be comparatively better monitoring, better digital integration, better awareness to farmer, that will ensure a less misutilization of the fertilizer. Then also alternative methods, for example biochar, it is a similar to like charcoal ka mix type, which will be added up with the soil, and this will increase the fertility of the soil, also ensure the moisture retention and the carbon storage. As I have talked about कि अगर soil के अंदर comparatively better organic material available है, so that will ensure the carbon sequestration in that particular soil. Now the scheme that we were talking about is the soil health card. So in the 2015, government came up with the soil health card scheme, which is the ministry concerned. Obviously when we talk about any scheme, the ministry should come. into place. So Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, Department of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, which is the concerned department and ministry. Now what it does, it basically assesses the soil. When you are going to assess the soil, you will observe that what is the profiling of the soil. Let's say if the soil is deficient in the nitrogen or maybe any other macronutrient, you are going to provide the fertilizer based upon that. So that gives, it's like a report card to you as a farmer, that see, this is your soil, this is lacking in this thing, and these are the good thing which is available in your soil. So if you are going to improve anything with respect to that soil, apply only those. But along with that, solution also is needed कि भाई, if the soil is lacking in this, these are the remedies you should do. आप वो चीज भी दो. Generally, the availability is there in the form of the urea based fertilizer, right? Lastly, that right now this scheme has been merged with the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana in 2022-23 और वहां पर soil health and fertility related header के अंदर this soil health card scheme is now part of it, right? So this is regarding the soil health card scheme. Now, when this particular scheme was there in 2015, again for the entire year it was discussed. 2017 में UPSC had asked the question, nationwide soil health card scheme aimed at expanding the cultivable area in the irrigation. We have seen, is it? You have to answer. Enabling the bank to assess the quantum of loans to be granted to farmer on the basis of soil quality. Have we discussed anything about bank? Just check once. Checking of the overuse of the fertilizer in the farmland. So you have to answer the correct option. Next is regarding the NITI Aayog released 2 reports in the regarding the India's services sector, right? So the syllabus pointer, obviously when we are talking about an organization, you can also keep it ki what kind of organization is NITI Aayog. So you can also relate it with the GS paper 2. There can be prelims based question talking about NITI Aayog. But then it has released the report regarding the India service sector. Now service sector is the major sector as far as the economy of India is concerned. And when we talk about the economy of India, GS paper 3 is the direct relation where we can relate. So Indian economy, growth, infrastructure, economy and the issues related to planning, mobilization of resources and all, where it is related to. Now see, generally we have observed this trend ki up budget maybe you will observe that we are focusing a lot on the industrial sector, despite that this service sector is contributing more than 50% of GVA. The employment status is comparatively lesser because these are जो इसमें अच्छे sectors हैं, those are giving the high value jobs, but the people that are getting employed are comparatively lesser. That's what is the issue with respect to the generally with respect to services sector कि भाई they are giving more payout, but the employment जो number है that is comparatively lesser. That's why the schemes are comparatively lesser focusing upon the services sector. But right now NITI Aayog has focused upon this sector in general, and it has highlighted 2 reports which talks about the insights from the GVA trends and the state level dynamics, and insights from the employment trends and the state level dynamics. A simple prelims question can be framed from this, that which particular organization has released recently 2 reports? NITI Aayog. NITI Aayog has released these 2 reports. Which sector they are targeting? Services sector. So when we talk about the sectors of economy, primarily we are talking about 3 sectors. There is primary sector which is dealing with the raw material, extraction of raw material, agriculture, fishing, all these things are part of the primary sector. When we talk about the secondary sector, it talks about the formation of certain things from that particular raw material. Maybe it includes the production, it includes the industrial things, it includes also the manufacturing wala aspects. But when we talk about providing support to the primary as well as the secondary sector where the services are involved, that is the 3rd sector, which is the services sector or the tertiary sector, right? So in that particular sense, it is the tertiary sector ka part is services. Now when this report is highlighting, these are highlighted under the following header. So what are the key highlights? First thing this report is highlighting is regarding the services that are making core of the India's employment transition. Now see, agriculture comparatively stagnated, ठीक है, बहुत ज़्यादा employment, comparatively lesser GVA, but very important. Industries obviously good, a lot of schemes are focusing upon, we are promoting promoting through the production links incentives, we are supporting through Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are creating certain special economic zones, right? So all these things are provided in order to support the manufacturing, the secondary sector. But what about the tertiary sector or the services sector? So in that particular cases, the GVA contribution is roughly 55%. But the employment status is lesser, and which is one such issue with respect to services sector. So roughly 188 million workers that are employed in the services sector, 188 million workers in 2023-24, second largest employer hai ye. Second largest employer. And when we talk about 2024-25 ka data, it has contributed roughly 55% of GVA. These are the pointers that can be directly written, highlighting the importance of services sector in your answer. Within even first line, you can incorporate these things, and this will highlight that you are aware regarding the data and fact regarding this sector. But when we talk about the employment, less than 1/3 of the total job means 55% GVA, but less than 33% of job. This is one such disparity that you can highlight. There is a need of focusing upon the skilling, upskilling, which will ensure comparatively better employment also in this sector. Now, what is the data for primary and secondary sector? Primary sector is accounting for roughly 16% of GVA and secondary sector 29%. But they are still way less than 55% of GVA, which is from the services sector. Now, when we talk about the employment landscape, in last few years, last 6 years, roughly 40 million jobs were added. And this is the second largest addition of the job after the construction. Now just assume a scenario. See, construction may, there is comparatively larger people that are getting employed. But see, social security, vulnerability are high. Vulnerability is high, social security is less in this. But other than that, services may comparatively it is high. I'm not saying that it is completely formal. There is more informal. But construction ki comparison mein it is higher, right? It is also acting as a shock absorber. Now just assume the scenario of the COVID pandemic. In the COVID pandemic, entire production was stopped. बहुत हद तक हो गया, construction was stopped. Which one thing that worked, whether it is any IT services, whether it is any other type of services, health, education, they worked, they even continued from the home, majority of the things, right? So this acts as a shock absorber. जॉब आपके दो सेक्टर उतना अच्छा परफॉर्म नहीं कर रहे हैं, दिस इज द थर्ड सेक्टर विच इज गोइंग टू प्रोवाइड अ कुशन टू द एंटायर इकोनॉमी. If this also gets a setback, then that will be a issue for the major issue for the economy. Now, high value services and the traditional services, that are the two type of division that we can do generally. What is the high value services? Basically, let's say doctor, engineer, maybe advocates, maybe the people who are earning also very good, even they are employed in the formal sector, getting the social security benefits also and getting very hefty perks. On the other hand, the traditional services, let's say the laborers, let's say maybe any other people who are providing certain services, but those people are not getting any type of social security benefit or the social advantage. Now, let's say somebody like that, say domestic help coming to your house, or maybe the street food vendor, or maybe the fruit vendor, these people also providing services, but these are not getting the traditional security net, right? And that's why this is a division between them. And अभी भी अगर आप देखो तो traditional sector में ही ज़्यादा लोग employed हैं. But obviously, GVA is higher from here, but this also should not be ignored. Here we have to focus upon comparatively more formalization. Lastly, it is mentioned that कि India is though shifting, India का gross value added भी India has improved, but this shift is slower. There is a need to increase this particular shift in order to ensure comparatively better output, but at the better rate also, right? So there is a need to holistic revamping or holistic change. Now, when we talk about the employment profile in the services, this is highlighting also ki how this employment in the services sector is distributed. When we talk about the special means, basically within the rural and the urban landscape, what is the distribution? So when we talk about this, so 60% of the urban workers are in the services sector, means 40% other में employed hai. 20% of the rural workers, that means in the rural areas, the chances are lesser that the person is opting for the services. They are either going for agriculture or maybe the industries, but lesser for the services. But when we talk about the urban areas, more preference to the services. That's why the gross value added from the cities or the urban areas is higher as compared to the rural areas. Also, gender ke bare mein, if there is any question regarding gender, you can quote these type of data also. So only 10.5% of the rural women. So rural areas में भी women का contribution is roughly 10.5%. So overall employment में only 10.5% of the rural women are there. Compared to when we talk about urban areas में women का composition vis-a-vis service का, so it is 60% of the urban women which are in the services. So again, there is disparity, but balanced by to some extent by the urban women. But yes, there is a disparity or gap between the rural and the urban region, both in the workers in general and the women related thing. Now, when we talk about the age, it is dominated by the prime age worker. Who are the prime age worker? These are basically those workers who are roughly in the 30s to late 40s. Matlab, roughly, this is not a formal definition, but 30 to roughly 49 or 50 years ka age, where they are most productive as far as the employment is concerned, where they are earning also good, right? So this is dominated by the prime age worker. So the managerial level you are talking about, right? But what about the youth? Generally 20 to 29 के बारे में क्या? So that's why youth is not that much associated with this particular sector, जो कि होना चाहिए था, and this is lacking. Higher education. So what is the impact of the higher education on the services sector? So if you are getting higher education, job access के chances are comparatively high. But when we talk about the present scenario, even if the entrepreneurship is on rise, but the service sector, you might have seen a lot of layoffs are going on, right? So the informality is still persisting, and this is one such major issue with the services sector, that if there is no social security, how that sector is going to contribute to a sustainable economy, right? Last is 87% is lacking social security. This is the major challenge. Rural women earn less than 50% of the men's wage. मतलब जितना men कमा रहा है, the 50% lesser wages are being earned by the rural women. So these are the issues which have to be plugged in order to ensure comparatively sustainable economy as far as the services sector is concerned, and these are being highlighted by the report. Now what should be the roadmap for the transformation? अब देखो, we have to accept first thing that there are issues with respect to this sector, right? Once we have acknowledged and highlighted those particular issues, now we have to also accept that how we can improve upon the situation. So what are the solutions? Formalization and the social protection. So though we know that there is 55% of GVA, but still there is lack as far as the formalization is concerned. Roughly 87% is the informalization that is prevailing. Social security is less. So this has to be improved. A few days back we have talked about an article regarding जो domestic workers हैं और domestic helps हैं, regarding the social security of that. उसके भी बहुत पहले we have discussed regarding the gig economy. The gig economy is reality, but we have to also bring them in the social security net. Otherwise there will be a lot of instability in the employment sector, right? Inclusive access, women and the rural youth के लिए. Now see, both the data that we have discussed, whether it is regarding the youth, whether it is regarding the women, both in the urban region and rural region, that highlights that inclusive तो नहीं है. It is not at all inclusive, because the disparity is showing that rural women 11% अगर है, तो urban women 60%. That means there is a large disparity, that may be because of the social stigma, that may be because of the lack of skills, that may be because of the lack of formal education, but that is lacking, right? So in that case, there is a ardent need in order to ensure the inclusive access. Obviously there are already schemes, but the implementation is to some extent need to be improved. And when we are talking about, let's say, the new technologies like LLMs, artificial intelligence, that has to be taking place even, and that upskilling and reskilling should be there for the women and rural youth also. Next is the tech-led skilling. This is what I was highlighting in the last aspect of this point, that now the technology is revamping. Now the things and the solution is at your doorstep. They are available at one click. So that is even accessible to the rural people, because the internet connectivity infrastructure that is getting revamped. So यहाँ पर भी tech-led skilling is important, and where you can even get the opportunities of work from home, right? So this tech-led skilling is important. So upskilling, reskilling, this is the important aspect. Lastly, the balanced regional growth through tier 2 and tier 3 hub. Now see, generally the economy के engines, if we are assuming that we are seeing the larger infrastructure, that they are in the tier 1 cities. But if we have to connect the rural region, first we have to bring these things through the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because the rural region are comparatively more connected to these tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And through that, these things can percolate to the villages also, and the people or the rural youth or the rural women can get comparatively better facilitation and help from them, right? So that's how is the roadmap for the revamping the services sector in India. So the question that have been asked previously, like normally the countries shift from agriculture to industry and then later on to services, but India shift directly from the agriculture to services. What is the reason for the huge growth of the services vis-a-vis industries? Can India become a developed country without strong industrial base? Now, obviously, not exactly similar thing, but इस तरीके के questions आते हैं. Like this UPSC ask. Similarly, UPSC can ask now कि there have been 1991 में LPG reform. After that, the services sector which led to the boom, which is also contributing in the GDP, but still lacking with respect to the formalization. Now, वहाँ पर you have to give a lot of examples that can be quoted from these particular report. Also, if this is a NITI Aayog report, you can utilize it as a credible source. तो आपके economy में the data facts के pointers में you can use this as a go ahead or the way ahead pointers regarding the economy. Last article that we have to discuss in detail is regarding the moving of the forest dwellers from the tiger reserve must be voluntary, which is highlighted by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Now, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is the concerned ministry with respect to the implementation of the Forest Rights Act. Means those forest dwellers or the tribal people who are residing in the forest regions since the generation, if there is a need to relocate, there has to be adequate compensation and adequate relocation that should be provided to those people. Ministry of Tribal Affairs is taking care of those things, right? So from UPSC GS paper to governance policy social justice, it is important topic. Government policies and the intervention for the development in the various sectors and issue arising out of their design and implementation. Also GS paper 3, where the environment ecology, it is important for the conservation and other purposes. Now, when we talk about this particular observation, so there has been recently a brief that is being provided by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs to the MOEFCC, which is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. What is that brief? The brief is regarding the reconciling the conservation and the community rights. Matlab, see, there are two things. One thing is conservation that talks about ki whatever this environment is, we should not disrupt unnecessarily this environment. But then we are talking about the equilibrium. In that equilibrium, there are also forest dwellers or the people who are living in coherence with those species since the time immemorial or since the ages. Now, if you are taking out them arbitrarily, even without their will, those people who are completely dependent on those forests since the generation, now don't you think so? They are also going to get impacted, and even the species those are there, they are also going to get impacted. That's why when we are talking about conservation, which Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is taking into consideration, community rights, which is the Ministry of Tribal Affairs taking into consideration, that has to be in convergence. और इसी के बारे में this article is talking about. So there is a policy framework for the relocation and coexistence in the India's tiger reserve. So this particular highlight is provided in the form of the policy framework for the relocation and the coexistence in the India's tiger reserve. Now, what are the recommendations that are being provided? First thing they are mentioning that this relocation should be voluntary and based on the free, prior and the informed consent. It should not be like you have designated arbitrarily an area that this is a tiger reserve and tomorrow you give the notices to the people or you will ask them to evict from this particular place. No, ऐसा नहीं होगा. Till the point of time there will be adequate settlement, there will be adequate provisions that will be made. This should not be done. So even that is being highlighted by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs that the Forest Right Act also provides the safeguard to these people who are the traditional forest dwellers. उनको भी rights available हैं regarding the residents. Now that is mentioning that there should not be any removal till the occupant, means those people who have to be removed or relocated gets the occupation, recognition and verification procedure is completed. That means this entire demarcation wala thing, then after that alternative employment should be given, there should be recognition to that particular area formally, matlab pura process complete ho jaye, and after that once verification is being done ki bhai yes it has to be done and this is the relocated facility where you are going to again in the coexistence with this particular forest region, tab tak nahi hataya jayega. Even they are talking about that the FRA is applicable even in the national parks, wildlife sanctuary and the tiger reserve. That's how it is talking about the voluntary aspect of this. Clear? Next it is talking about creation of a national framework for the community centered conservation and the relocation. So national framework for the community centered conservation and the relocation jointly by the Environment and the Tribal Affairs Ministry. Again, since they have prepared this particular document, again they are talking about convergence होना चाहिए दोनों के बीच में in order to ensure conservation also, but at the same time the community rights also. That's why there is a need to creation of the national framework for the community-centered conservation and the relocation. Now, what are the challenges that are being faced in the relocation? Because see, when we talk about conservation and when we talk about development, there will always be a debate. Excessive focus on conservation may lead to issue with respect to development, ki development ko you will prevent. Excessive focus on development, like we have seen in the case of the northern state or the states of the hill areas, in that places if excessive development is there and we are not taking into consideration of the environment in the surrounding, that will lead to the destruction or disaster. So in that cases, there has to be a clear understanding regarding the conservation and the people's right. Along with that, right and the protection model. Dekho, people are available with rights, there is protection model also. So in that cases, traditionally क्या होता था कि if suppose करो एक region को, if you have to secure this region, you will make all the peoples exit from that region and you will conserve that region. You will not allow any hindrance in the conservation of that region. But then later on the model has developed, Forest Rights Act arrived, and then in that particular cases, those who were the traditional forest dwellers or those who are living in this particular region since the multiple ages or काफी टाइम से रह रहे हैं, in that context they were being provided with the adequate avenues and facilitation. So ensuring this, that what to focus more upon is one such challenge जो कि debate create करता है, that prevents even development, that even prevents the conservation. Livelihood disruption. Now suppose karo a tribal person who has resided in that forest region since let's say 50 year or 20 year or 30 year, now they are completely dependent on the forest, maybe the minor forest produce, maybe the species, but in that cases if you are asking them now go to the cities, take this occupation, is it easy for them? Obviously no. They are living in isolation, they are living with their own traditional culture, it will become very, very difficult. So that's why the livelihood will get disrupted and even their existence will come into the crisis. Next is uneven development and the regional disparity. Now see, you see the rural areas, the developmental status is different. When you see tier 1, tier 2 cities, the developmental level is different, and tier 3, tier 4 mein और different hota hai, right? So uneven development hai even in the forest or the nearby region and the extreme urban region, there is development deficit. So that's why if you are relocating them maybe to cities, there will be a drastic change with respect to their environment, their surrounding, and that will lead to the disruption. Lastly, the sustainable development goal. So though we have the sustainable development goal regarding the protection of environment, protection of the indigenous community is also there, even reduction of poverty, reduction of hunger is also there. So these things have to be balanced. Extreme of anything is harmful for the sustenance, right? So these are the challenges that we have to keep in mind. Now what should be the way ahead? First is the conservation by co-management. Now when we talk about the conservation, why it is only government it is conserving, it should be also the traditional people who know the better methods to conserve. And we have seen with respect to the restoration of multiple species that the local people were found as the better manager of that particular species community. So the conservation and co-management should be prioritized. Next is regarding the in situ development. That means within that region, whether it is health framework, educational framework, skilling framework, brand and the facilitation. So that should be promoted within that region, right? So within promotion hona chahiye, there are bodies like TriFed. There are many other things like let's say Janjatiya Gaurav Divas. So that will instill them with the feeling of pride with their culture and tradition. Integrate the indigenous knowledge. So see, we also know that there is access and benefit sharing ka protocol, which is talking about that if you are taking any important thing, maybe information, maybe practices, maybe product from the tribal region or those region which are preserving them from the long time period, and if you are not sharing the benefit which you are taking from their product, it is wrong. So you have to share the benefit also with them. So there is indigenous knowledge available in the India's forest. India had developed TKDL, okay, for this thing, right? And in that cases, the indigenous knowledge should be utilized, that should be documented also, and that should be also utilized for the traditional management practices. Because देखो, when the forests are surviving till now, that means there are chances that people and the environment can coexist. There is a need for the environmental surrounding for the existence of people. Lastly, the conditional fiscal incentives. So there should be implementation adequately of the FRA, but there should also be the proper fiscal incentive should be provided, ठीक है. So measurable FRA implementation and also the co-management outcomes that should be quantified, and also the benefit should also be provided to the communities which are preserving them. Clear? Okay. So now see, this is the type of PYQ that UPSC asks. At the national level, ministry is model agency, nodal agency होना चाहिए to ensure the effective implementation of the scheduled tribe and the other traditional forest dwellers recognition of the Forest Act 2006. ठीक है. So Ministry of Environment Forest, write the answer in the comments. Having discussed about the important article, now let's talk about the places in news. So today we are going to discuss about Turkey. So the capital city is Ankara. Now very unique country, right? Why very unique? Because see, again, recently it was in news because of multiple reasons. अभी बहुत recently because of the Operation Sindoor, because Turkey का जो stand था to support Pakistan with the arms and equipments, that was against the India stand, right? And obviously because of which the India and Turkey are at the confrontational stage. Also previously India supported Turkey when there was previous earthquake and the other disasters. Now at this point of time it is to see whether the similar kind of diplomacy is going to take place when the relations are deteriorated. So that's why again when 6.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Turkey, so in that case again the location becomes important. UPSC के case में if the location is again and again in news, the chances are high कि UPSC question पूछ सकता है. Not about that thing, but generally about their physical geography, their other geographical things, or maybe the other physical features, or maybe about any other thing which is relevant, right? So when we talk about Turkey, it is roughly situated between Asia and Europe. So some portion is in Asia, some portion is in Europe, right? So you can see this is the location of Turkey. Black Sea in the north, Mediterranean Sea in the south, and यहाँ पर this region you are able to see this is the Aegean Sea. So this is the Aegean Sea. यहाँ पर this water body that you are able to see, this is the Sea of Marmara. Now above the Sea of Marmara, यहाँ पर the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara are connected by the Bosphorus Strait. So the Bosphorus Strait is connecting the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara, and here there is a strait which is connecting the Sea of Marmara to the Aegean Sea, which is the Strait of Dardanelles, right? These can be asked by UPSC. ये बहुत tricky होते हैं, and this can be asked easily by UPSC. Now talking about the physical feature, you can see there is Greece and the Bulgaria in the northwest wala side. There is Georgia and Armenia in the northeastern side. There is Azerbaijan ka thoda sa portion, and then there is Iran also touching in the eastern side. There is Syria and Iraq on the southern side, right? So these are the borders and the boundary country: Georgia, Armenia, Greece, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Black Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and the Aegean Sea. What are the geographical features? The major river include Euphrates and the Tigris, again the civilizational river, because this region is also the civilizational region. The highest point is the Mount Ararat, 5,165 meter, not that important, but the location is important. Bosphorus Strait, Dardanelles, Sea of Marmara connecting the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea. The Black Sea to Aegean Sea through this entire channel, which also includes, if I show you again, which also includes a sea in between. This is the Sea of Marmara, which is getting connected by Black Sea and the Aegean Sea. So the Black Sea and Aegean Sea are connected by Sea of Marmara. On the above side it is Bosphorus Strait, on the lower side or this particular side it is the Strait of Dardanelles, right? So this is regarding the places in news. Now let's discuss about certain other quick updates. First is regarding cyclone Montha, right? So recently there has been the landfall that has been made by the cyclone Montha in the Bay of Bengal coast. What is the landfall? Basically the landfall is when the cyclone struck that particular coast, and then the rainfall starts at that particular places, and the cyclone moves, that start getting dissipated. After the landfall, the cyclone starts getting dissipated, but that activity of the landfall is a disastrous activity for the coastal region. Now what is Montha? It is the fragrant flower in Thai. Okay, so it is a Thai name. Now what is the tropical cyclone? This is the cyclone found or observed in the tropical region between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, right? So tropical. Now what is the movement? So the movement is anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere and the clockwise in the southern hemisphere. Now this is a rotating low pressure, matlab that is a low pressure region, and that particular low pressure is rotating with the help of the Coriolis force. But there is a difference between the temperate and the tropical cyclone. Temperate cyclone is basically because of the frontal convergence, or basically we can say the frontal interaction, the cold front and the warm front. On the other end, the temperate cyclone. Tropical cyclone is basically because of the movement. So temperate is because of the frontal, tropical is because of basically the availability of the low pressure region. So these are the conditions mentioned, like sea surface temperature should be roughly around 27 degree. Presence of Coriolis force, which will be helping to rotate in the anti-clockwise or the counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere opposite, right? The pre-existing weak low pressure area that will further intensify and that will start rotating and that will move in the direction of the wind, right? It is also known as hurricane in Atlantic, typhoon in the Western Pacific and the South China Sea, and Willy Willies in the Western Australian region. So ऐसा नहीं है कि this is only available in the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. This is also available across the globe, but the name is different for every. Next is regarding the Rehabilitation Council of India, RCI. So to modernize and democratize the rehabilitation education, the Rehabilitation Council of India has introduced the reform. So when organization is there in use, obviously the nature of organization can be in question. So it is a registered society in 1986, but later on through the RCI Act of 1992, it became a statutory organization in 1993. So Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment के अंदर it is a statutory organization. What is statutory organization? Which is formed by any specific act of the Parliament. Now the purpose is to regulate the training policies and programs of rehabilitation of the persons with a disability. As the name suggests, Rehabilitation Council of India for the training policies and programs of the rehabilitation of the persons with disability. Also, it lead to the standardization of the training courses for the professionals who are dealing with these particular specific sections, right? So this is regarding the Rehabilitation Council of India. Mainly important aspects are what kind of organization, now statutory, formed, registered under the previously under the Societies Act, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. These are the very important aspects. Next is regarding the access and benefit sharing. So the context is the National Biodiversity Authority released the money for the red sanders cultivator, promoting the sustainable use of the biological resources under the ABS framework. Now see, what is ABS, access and benefit sharing? Suppose karo, if you are a forest dweller, you are aware of a medicinal property of a plant which can cure a lot of disease, let's say cancer. But when the government or the basically researcher comes and with your help, they are going to get to know about the medicinal property of this particular plant, and when they are going to take this plant, when they are going to do certain testings and eventually they are going to develop certain medicine. जब वो सब हो जाता है, after that whatever benefits they are taking, obviously that will go to the company. They might patent also, but those benefits should also be shared with the traditional dwellers who have given you the prima facie knowledge and information. So that's how it is important, and this is provided under the framework of the CBD, which is the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity, UNCBD, right? So it is covered under the CBD. So Bonn guidelines, which was part of that, and also along with that the Nagoya Protocol, which was later on developed. So here the idea was initiated in Nagoya Protocol. It was provided that ये करना है आपको, the countries को बताया गया कि that has to be shared. Now India के context में it is the Biological Diversity Act, which talks about the access and benefit sharing, sustainable use, conservation and the access and benefit sharing that has to be done. Next is regarding the East Asia Summit. So recently there has been the ASEAN Summit. On the sidelines of ASEAN Summits, the country leader also meets for the East Asia Summit. Which are the member countries that are taking participation in the East Asia Summit? So these are the countries of ASEAN. Now there are 11 member countries. Along with that, there is Australia, there is New Zealand, there is India, there is China, there is South Korea, there is Japan. So 6 FTA partners of ASEAN. Along with that, US is also there, and the Russia. So these are the member countries. What they are discussing? They are discussing about the East Asian region in terms of political, economic and the strategic aspect. So the political cooperation, strategic and the economic cooperation के लिए dialogue है. The leaders comes, discuss these particular issues and also highlight the solution regarding this. So 20th East Asia Summit adopts the Kuala Lumpur Declaration on the Peace and Stability. So since the ASEAN Summit was in Kuala Lumpur, KL, which is in Malaysia, right? And that's why this also took place. So 2005 में it was initiated and 20th East Asia Summit था. ठीक है. This is regarding the East Asia Summit. Declaration aims to implement the joint projects and the activities under the East Asia Summit Plan of Action 2024 to 28 and also the ASEAN 2045 का जो vision है उसके accordingly this particular thing is aligned, right? The next article is regarding the 8th Central Pay Commission. So simply there were multiple pay commission, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Right now which is implemented is the 7th pay commission. Now there is going to be the constitution of the 8th pay commission. Center has approved that. What is the 8th pay commission? So for the central government employee, the service conditions, the payment, the pensions, whatever things are there, they will be set based upon ki what is the economic situation, what is the inflation, what are different other things, क्या private sector कैसा pay कर रहे हैं, public sector undertakings how they are paying, and based upon that the central governments के employees का pay is being decided. So this is the basically temporary commission with a chairperson, one part-time member and also the member secretary, right? So whenever it is formed, it takes roughly 18 months in order to submit its recommendation, and once the recommendations are submitted, that will be implemented, but it can take effect even from the earlier date, and then obviously the area will be provided to the employees. So it is expected to take effect from 1st January 2026, right? So it will review, recommend the changes in the pay, pension, service condition of the central government employee. Consider the economic conditions, fiscal prudence, cost of the non-contributory pension scheme, state finances, right? Public sector, private pay structures, etc. Next is regarding the Amazon's face, which is the scientists in Brazil have launched the Amazon face, which is the free air CO2 enrichment, right? Project near the Manaus to study how the Amazon rainforest will respond to the future atmospheric CO2 level. So this is basically a simulation type of project. In future, it is expected that the carbon dioxide emission is going to increase in the air. The concentration of carbon dioxide will be comparatively high. What will be the response from the side of the lungs of the earth, which is the Amazon rainforest? किस तरीके से वो respond करेंगे? This is to be assessed. So it seeks to simulate the atmosphere of the future and assess the how tropical forests adapt to the rising CO2 temperature and also the humidity, right? It is to understand carbon uptake capacity, photosynthesis and forest resilience with the continuous monitoring. So these particular things are going to be tested and analyzed in that particular Amazon face project. एक simple सा question आ सकता है, जैसे for example there was previously एक loon project था for the internet and all, right? So similarly Amazon face project was recently in news, was related to certain facial scanning or maybe the scanning or the iris scanning and something like that. So इस तरीके से they can give the statements, and here it is to simulate the high carbon dioxide related atmosphere in order to assess how the plants and the forest, specifically the Amazon forest, is going to react. So it will be a kind of patch test you can think about, right? So this is regarding Amazon face. So with this, we have completed the entire News Today discussion for the 29th of October. We have tried to discuss the things which were more relevant in more detail and also tried to cover that holistically along with the PYQ. There must be question obviously on your screen. Try to solve them. Also visit on the Digital Current Affairs portal for getting further benefits with respect to the current affairs. So I hope the things whichever I have told you is clear to you. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.